she says that beauty is an incredibly strong force, and it can harness all other forces, but that we often fight against our own beauty due to shame for what we have done. She quotes our Christian mythology. It begins with the shame of gaining knowledge and enjoying sexuality. She goes very far, and she says that the things that we have done and that we are ashamed of ultimately all have to do with our shame of sexuality. And she said, right from the beginning, I would like to clarify that I, the earth, am a sexual being. All my rocks and landscapes and everything and rivers are sexual beings.
Hi everyone. Do you feel alone or abandoned when you're out in nature? Or do you rather feel a deep connection with the animals, the waters, the trees, the nature around you, almost as if Mother Earth were a living being, almost as if she were your parent? In today's episode, we will talk about Mother Earth, or Gaia. I'd like to introduce you to Sten Linnander. Welcome to the program, Sten.
Thank you, Anders. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. It's going to be a very interesting, fascinating episode today. We will talk about your communication with Gaia, communication with Mother Earth, which is really, really fascinating. And before we started recording this, but when we had some communication, you and I, not you and I and Gaia, but just you and I before this interview, you said that you are a Swede with a global heart. And I know that I write somewhere on my own website something like that, Swede with a global heart. You said that's me too. But I think I would argue that you are even more of that. So tell us a bit about your life journey, your background. You're from Sweden, but you have almost never lived in Sweden, or what's the story here?
Yeah. First of all, the Swede with the global heart, that's actually a quote from you. So
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Get that back to you. And I feel that way also. And most of the things I've experienced in life, I have the feeling that these were like events that I was just placed in front of and I had to act. And that also goes for my global outlook, because I was born in Sweden, in outside of Stockholm, Lidingö, and my father was a judge, and he had worked both in Stockholm and also in Ethiopia. And then I was born. I had two siblings that were older than I, and at the age of 6, we all took off for Kabul, Afghanistan, where my father was a legal advisor to the government there, paid by the United Nations. And I started school in an English-speaking school there, an international school. We stayed there for 2.5 years and then went back to Sweden for a year and then off again to Kathmandu, Nepal for another 3.5 years. I was then between 10 and 13 years old. And there too I went to school, a Jesuit school for Nepalese boys, and then an American school. After that, I had a more or less regular growing up in Sweden, from, let's say, 13 till I left Sweden when I was 26. And in the meantime, I finished my studies. I studied physics and geophysics at the University of Stockholm. And then I took off because I didn't know what to do. I was depressed, and I felt I had gone through a book of a book listing all the professions that you can take. I was trying to find something that would fit for me, and none of them actually fit. And at the time, I was pretty depressed. One reason, I think, being that already in first grade, I was put into second grade So for my whole time in school, I was a head shorter than everybody else, and I was such a foreign figure for them, having been in all these strange places. I didn't wear the same clothes and so on as they did, and so I went off to a commune at the time in the 70s. This was with some pretty radical commune where they spent 4 or 5 hours a day on spontaneous theater. And this ultimately, I stayed there for 3 years, and it ultimately took me out of my depression. I felt totally renewed.
And that was in Germany or Austria or something?
That was in Austria, yeah. I was there from the end of 76 to 1980. It was in many ways a cult, and in many ways a not very nice place, I'd say, with a guru and a lot of stuff that wasn't good. But for my purposes, I came out of there a wholly new person, so to speak.
So it worked for you then. But what was it? What was the name of it? Was it something you might know about?
It was called Friedrichshof. It started by an Austrian action artist. He was
Schwarzenegger.
Beg your pardon?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm thinking of when you say that.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a martial artist. He was an active action. It was called Wiener Aktionismus, so Viennese actionism, which is a certain art direction, and which made him a bit famous also. But he was a very wild kind of person, and there could be much to say about that, but I don't think it's so. It for me personally was only important because it cleared my emotions. I became normal, as I would see it. I got rid of my depression, and I was ready for something new. Well, after that, I spent another 10 years in another community where I was in part in charge of inviting cutting edge people from all over the world. One of the ideas was to bring in the most intelligent approaches to many different areas and synthesize them or bring them together in a community. If it was about health and healing, or if it was about spirituality or sexuality or horticulture, permaculture, and many other things, or the study of water, etc. So
that was in the United States, wasn't it?
No, that was in Germany.
That was in Germany. Okay.
Yeah. I stayed there from about 1983 to 1983 to 1994 when I left that place also.
So that was country number 5.
I suppose so. Sweden, Afghanistan, Nepal, Austria, and Germany. Yeah. And then 1994, I and my wife, I had gotten married there with a woman in the community. We took off for Arizona. And both of us, we studied Native American spirituality or shamanic spirituality. And this, I'm still involved with that. This is now 30 years ago that we left there to go there. But we stayed there for about 10 years. And this was when I had the experiences that you mentioned about communicating with the earth, with Gaia. And
we'll dive into that, of course.
Yeah. And then we went back to Germany. My wife wanted to be close to her parents, and before they died. And we've been in Germany ever since. Now I'm in Constance, at Lake Constance, at the border to Switzerland.
Yeah. Fascinating background. So 6 countries. So you're truly a global citizen, one might say.
Well, yeah, I noticed one thing
which is very pertinent for what you have been working on.
Yes, it is, and I realized that I always knew where I was on the globe, so to speak. I was in Nepal. I sort of thought, okay, I'm there north of India, south of China. That's where I am now, or in Arizona, and so on. So I always sort of had a little globe inside of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I can resonate with that. I have the same feeling actually. I've always been super interested in the Earth itself and geography and and all those different kinds of natures and climates and stuff. So yeah.
You know, when I didn't start out by studying physics or geophysics. I started out studying nuclear physics or theoretical physics at the Institute of Technology in Stockholm. But I didn't understand very much. I mean, you could calculate things, but I wanted to understand more about matter, about who we are, about what is this, where am I, what do I consist of, and why, and so on.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe physics could tell me, or nuclear physics even more, something about it. But all they told me was that I was a probability wave or something like this. And
it's like shut up and calculate.
That's right. That's right. So I quit there. I fell in love with a woman, and the next day I quit. After 4 years of study, I just gave up on it. And then I moved to the university and continued studying what really interested me, which was, as you say, geophysics, about the earth, about clouds, about the minerals, about the weather, about not just the atmosphere, but also the waters and the rivers and everything around it, including the magnetic forces around the earth and its connection to the sun, and
not
also
least important
astronomy and things like that.
Yeah.
So all that then came back later when I was studying there in the United States and had this experience of communicating with the earth.
Okay, so you're a jack of all trades, you might say, as we've heard here. Right. And for instance, you've told me that you run fascinating and successful projects to empower women in Nepal, a country where you lived when you were a child as well. But today, that might be perhaps the subject of another podcast episode we can do together, you and I. But I wanted to focus today on your knowledge and insights about Earth as a living being, and that we are all a part of, and your communication with her. You wrote a book called that I just read. I read it online. As an ebook, so I don't have it to show here, but I can.
Okay, I have one.
You have it there. Here. Good. Yeah. Yes, I am with you. I am with you. The Earth wants to speak with us.
Wants to talk with us. Yeah.
Yeah. You have already kind of touched on how this all started, but how tell us more. How did this relationship with Mother Earth begin? I understand you've had, apart from what you've already touched on here, you've had many, or at least a few experiences in your life that can't be explained by materialist science, as far as I understand.
Yes, and I'm currently writing a book called Magic and Mystery in Everyday Life. And that there I list about 25 episodes or events that I've experienced that cannot be explained in normal physical scientific terms. Because I think the world is not just set up to be measurable. It is also, there are connections that we are not aware of and that science is also not aware of. Or let's say, even if they're aware of it, they don't take it seriously because usually what they say, oh, that's just anecdotal evidence and so on. And that goes for things like past lives or telepathy or synchronicities of all different kinds, or the existence of, let's say, ghosts or of non-physical beings that one can connect with, and that ancestors, for example, and that can help you in many ways, which most indigenous cultures, they fully believe that, and they live that way. They have their ancestor shrines in every home and so on. So it's nothing new. What I've experienced is just, I think, maybe because I was so much an outsider, I sort of decided to look for and I felt I wasn't taught really the truth about things. So I started pursuing things that didn't quite fit to see if there were like openings there. And so I was always interested in parapsychology and topics like that. Uh, uh, Fairly early on, in my 20s, actually. But what was your question?
Can you tell about maybe a couple of those episodes that you've experienced that weren't really explainable by materialist science?
I can mention one. In Arizona, I and my wife, we wanted to get a larger place. We wanted to establish some kind of community. I wanted to establish some kind of research community out in the desert, and we found a place that which was ideal, and it cost about $1.5 million. Now, I didn't have that kind of money at all. I had enough to get by, but that was all. But I've always had the principle that first the idea, then the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I didn't know how to raise it at all. So I thought I have to think outside the box. So I had just learned to use some of the techniques or tools on my spiritual path. And I thought of trying to connect with the ancestors of the land, meaning the Native Americans who had lived there before. And so I drove out to that place, which was an hour east of Phoenix, out in the desert, 5 kilometers from the nearest town. And I sat down there and I focused on connecting with the ancestors. And suddenly, and this really surprised me, I saw in my inner eye the face of a very wrinkled old man. And he was a medicine man of a kind. And behind him, I saw his whole tribe. And so I decided, wow, okay, I'd better straighten up here. This seems to be a bit formal. So I said, listen, we'd like to have this place somehow. Can you help us get it? And I got the answer, yes, we like what you're doing here. I explained briefly what we were doing, and we will help you. And that was it. And I packed up and went back home to Phoenix. And that's when things started to change. First of all, the realtor who was going to sell it as a luxury object for $1.5 million, she sent up a helicopter to take pictures of it. The pictures didn't come out. She couldn't use them. She got an assessor, an evaluator to evaluate the place within 6 weeks, and he got $1,000 advance within 3 weeks. And after 6 weeks, he still hadn't come up with anything. So she had to take him to court to get her $1,000 back. Then the realtor said, hey, this thing is hexed. I don't want it anymore.
Oh, really? He
Yeah.
said that.
And that was nice, and maybe the price also came down, but I still didn't have that kind of money. So what happened was I happened to talk to my sister in Sweden, whom I spoke to maybe once every 2 months. And she asked me what I was doing. I said, I found this place. And she said, oh, that's interesting that I'd like to have. She said, well, do you have pictures of it? No, but I had a VHS a video of it that the realtor had made. So I just sent that off to her, didn't think more about it. And turns out that came to her the same day that her husband had just come back from a 3-week trip. And they both looked at it, and he said, hey, we could buy that place and rent it out to Sten. But of course, he wanted a pretty high rent, and like $4,000 a month or something.
Okay.
And I didn't have that. So he said, well, at some point your father's going to die, and you're going to inherit a third of his house. And so we can have that as security, and you don't have to pay anything. And so I moved in there.
Ah.
And the same day when we signed the papers, the owner of the place took me aside, and she said, when you came down the road here, I knew that it was you who were going to buy this place. And I said, how did you know this? she said, well, 3 weeks before you came, my family was sitting up on the deck at sundown, and we were drinking beer. And one of my sons, my youngest son, he suddenly became very strange and started speaking in a strange tongue, in a strange voice. And we knew from him that he had sometimes told us that because he had been finding arrowheads from arrows, and he said that the Indians had shown him where it was somehow. So now he was sitting up there and he started speaking and said, "I'm now speaking for the ancestors of this place, and we know you will want to you want to sell it, and we want to ask you to sell it to someone who will remember us." So that to me made it full circle.
Full circle. Incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic story.
Yeah. That's
I
one
love
of 25 stories. So
that's a book to really look forward to. And it's coming out soon, or?
yes, it's basically finished in German. I just have to make a cover and somehow print it and things like that. As a Selbstverlag.
Yeah, well, we'll put links in the description box afterwards, of course, for people to find stuff like that, like your coming book, and I'll come back to that. So, but also when you were there in Arizona, you not only experienced this fascinating contact with the ancestors of the land there, you also, it was there that you had this, as you said, this experience of communicating with the earth herself. It was in the fall of 1996 or something.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah. So tell us about that. How did that start, and how did it come about?
Okay, it came about through a ceremony. Part of the path I was on, it consisted of teachings and ceremonies. Ceremonies in order to integrate whatever questions we were dealing with. And now I had been working within the community in Germany also. It just so happened that I started to regress people into past lives. And I was so curious as to what I received that I decided to follow up on them. I went to Portugal and I went to New York to follow up on different stories that I've been told. And they were amazingly correct, and the people couldn't have known about them. Mm. So I had a positive view of that. Even if I couldn't swear that it was a question of past lives, there can be other explanations of it. You can tune into whatever life somebody's had. Maybe that also explains why there are so many women who have been Cleopatra and so on.
I know, yeah. Some people say that it's actually not past lives, it's like parallel lives that you can tap into, and some lives that are going on, which, because there's only the now moment, there is no time, and some of the lives are more relevant to your life right now than others. So that's why you tap into them. Some people explain it like that.
Yeah, and I think there is a mixture of things happening there. Because in one case also, there was the woman was a baron in Portugal, baron, who went to China in 1523 and traded in silk. And I later went down to Portugal to research that and found that it had many details that you couldn't have known about. But this woman, who was a young Danish woman, 19 years old, had never finished school. At 15, she left Greenland, where she was born, and we had a party there in the group where I was right then, and she fell asleep on the couch. And at midnight or something, I wanted to wake her up, and she started speaking to me in French. And I answered her in French, and she told me she was this same baron who'd gone to China, but she was now 4 years old. And we spoke for half an hour. We spoke French, and she told me all about her life and about her teacher who had taught her French and so on. When she came out of it, she didn't know a word of French, not a word. And all the other people who knew her, they said, no, she doesn't know any French. So lots of anyway.
Yeah, it reminds
just
me of a
leads-
story I've heard from someone I know very well who has had almost the same experience. But anyway, that's aside
Yeah,
from
I mean, there's so much magic out there that we don't talk about.
yes.
And everybody has had moments, experiences like that, or not like that necessarily, but unusual experiences.
Yeah, I mean, the classical is you suddenly have a sense that somebody's going to call you, or you start thinking about somebody that you haven't thought about in 20 years, and
Exactly.
30 seconds later they call or
Yeah,
stand at the door or something. So that's a
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah, and that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, the thing about past lives, that leads up now to we were doing a ceremony where with the aim of finding a past life, actually three different ceremonies. And we were asked to find details that we could corroborate later that we didn't know about. Well, during one of these, I think it was the third one I was doing, I landed somewhere where I thought this is not a past life. And later when I spoke to my teacher there, he said, no, it was not a past life. I found myself on a spaceship. Now, I'm not so much a friend of spaceships or of aliens and so on. I don't like it when they kidnap people or whatever they do, or cattle mutilations and things like this. Now, there might be nice ones too, but anyway, I found myself on a spaceship, and since it was all I had, I decided to explore the spaceship. I was in a corridor, and there was a door leading away from the corridor. I opened it. It was a large, dark room, but at the end of the room, there was some light coming in from a window. So I walked up to the window, and what I saw in front of me was the Earth. Beautiful, incredibly beautiful, with all the colors of blue and green and brown, and with all the clouds and everything. And while I was just in awe at seeing this, I heard a voice in my head. Now, I knew that I was in a slight trance state because it was a sort of guided meditation. But so I was fully aware of where I was and that I wasn't on a spaceship. But I heard a voice saying, and I knew immediately it was the Earth itself speaking to me. I had no doubt. I don't know how I knew, but I just knew that. And it said, now that we have established this communication, this channel of communication, with the help of these of some pretty complicated ceremonial preparations that we did, calling in powers and so on and so forth. Now that it has been established, it is rooted in you cellularly, this communication. So I want you to go up on a mountain here in Phoenix, and there is a range of mountains going straight through Phoenix, and just speak to me just like that without any preparations. And that was it. That was the end of.
So the Earth, so Earth told you that, instructed you that you
Yes.
should go out on
Yes.
this mountain
Yes.
and
Yes.
continue the communication.
To come in, exactly. Well, I mean, I hesitated because, like I sometimes say, I'm not a Moses who goes up on the mountain and talks to God or to whoever. But I mean, if you say A, you have to say B. You can't just get a request like that and not take it seriously. So a week later, I went up to the top of that mountain, and I was sitting there sweating. It was in September, and it's about 40, 45 degrees hot out there, even in September.
And
So
that's
I
not
was-
Fahrenheit. That's centigrade.
No, that's not Fahrenheit. And so I was sitting there and feeling kind of stupid because I thought I can't I'd probably just invent something or something just to get things going. But what can I do now? I had a piece of paper with me if something should come. And so I just closed my eyes and I thought back to where I had seen the Earth in all its beauty. And suddenly the voice came again. And it said, well, it started by saying, you were led here because I didn't know on what summit to go and so on. And then I saw a big bird flying, a bird of prey flying around one of the summits. So I thought, oh, that's where I should go. Huh? Take these as medicine signs, as we call them in the so-called deer tribe that I was studying with. Anyway, that was then the beginning of I was asked to come back up on that mountain 3 times a week for 3 months.
Mm.
And then the whole transmission would end. That would be it. And I did. Now, if you just imagine going up there, for example, the 10th time, and you're struggling up the mountain, and it's not like, wow, anymore, because you've done this 10 times. So it's more like, oh, I wonder what she's going to talk about today.
Yeah, more like a kind of a hard job you have.
Yeah, up and down, yeah.
Up and down, and listening to this information. But did you have a writing pad or something? Did you write
I had
down?
a writing pad. I wrote down everything that I got.
Mm.
Yeah. And I was even asked, the 3rd time, I was asked to somehow publish it, or to go out with what I received.
Yeah, and you did, but it took a while.
Well, yeah, I a bit hastily said, yes, I'll do that. Then I made a little summary of it, and I showed it to some friends, even from the path that I was on. And all I got back was like a big question mark. They didn't react to it at all.
Hmm.
So I put it on ice, and I put it on ice for 15 years or something, up till 2012 or something. And the other was 1996. So then I realized, 2010, there I turned 60. So I thought, if I don't do it now, I won't do it ever. So I decided, okay, I'll do it. So, but I also wanted to not just write about something I had experienced, and I also had many questions about what I had received. So I decided to rent a place out in nature and try to reestablish the connection, because I felt unless I speak from now and say, then it's a bit fake. So I managed to reestablish the contact. I just focused on that day and night to get that connection, and I asked it questions about what I had received, and I got answers to that. And then I put it all together in this book that I mentioned.
Yeah.
5 years later, I was asked to write another book, and I did that also. It's called Welcome Home: Connecting with the Earth from Within, something like that.
I haven't read that one. So
No.
Is that also a reference to communication with Earth?
Yes. What happened there was I decided to, or I don't know how it came about, because I had sent out my book to many friends, and some of them were very, very impressed by it, and they really liked it. And so about 10 friends of mine, I asked them for questions. And I said, if you have questions to the Earth, I'd like to ask them to the Earth and then publish that as a book, which I did. And so that's what it's all about. It's not simply the Earth telling me something, it's answering questions.
So when you talk to Earth here, what is it that is actually communicating with you? You have mentioned somewhere that it is some kind of combined intelligence in which we are a part. So what is it? How would you describe what it is that is communicating with you?
It's a very good question, because I had that same question over several years until I realized that if you look at the Earth as the astronauts did, or from very far away, even outside the solar system, you see there's this living thing. It's growing. Things are happening on that thing, the Earth. So it's alive, basically. And but what is alive and what has intelligence? As I see it, based on everything I know and have experienced, it's not just humans and animals that are sentient, but also plants. We know this from many much recent research, and there's an intelligence to minerals also. So as I see it, when I speak to the Earth, I'm speaking to the mineral world, plus the plant world, plus the animal world, plus the human world, plus everything that the Earth consists of, including the magma, and including that there is an intelligence even in what we would call dead matter. That everything has intelligence, and that this is the sum of this intelligence that I speak to. So, in a sense, I am speaking to an Earth that includes me, and that includes humans, because the Earth also told me that she experiences everything that we humans experience. She feels she is so close to us. Now, first, you might ask me what did she say?
Yes, of course.
Because before this interview, I picked out some things that she said that I thought would be.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, but
Or do you have
know
some,
what does she say and what does she want from us?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, she says that she is alive and conscious. That's her main statement. And this is something that, yes, there is the Gaia theory, but Lynn Margulis and Lovelock, they both insisted that they did not mean that she was conscious or communicating, although I think that's what they thought. But if you say that, then you're not a professor anymore.
No, they were ceding to the scientific community when they said that.
Yes, and that has gone very far, and people use even that what changed from being a hypothesis to being a theory or something like that. Well, and so I this was a give and take a little bit. I asked, "Are you a goddess like Gaia?" And the answer I got was, yes. But when you say that, you tend to forget that you humans, you are also that gods and goddesses are also in you. So, and you tend to regard a goddess as like a super parent. And this instills in you a kind of fear because you put this outside of yourself, something you could call a fear of God, the fear of God. And then she spoke about the emergence of life, how life appeared on Earth. She said it appeared through the lovemaking between the sun and the earth. That's a very nice image. But if you ask, at least back then, if you ask scientists, they said, well, there was this soup, the whatever you call it, Ursuppe in German.
Yeah, primordial soup, maybe.
Primordial soup, and then you had some lightning, and that created amino acids, and that led to molecules and life, so to speak. But that's not what the Earth said. But interestingly enough, about 30 years after I received what I received, NASA came out with a statement saying that they now believe that that life on Earth was, because they say that the composition of this soup and so on was not, and that the energies of the lightning wouldn't have been strong enough for that to happen. That came later, this statement. And so NASA said instead they believe that super eruptions from the sun at the time created the energy that was necessary to create life on Earth. So this to me like confirmed, the Earth called it lovemaking. Well, maybe that's how it happens between planets.
Yes, it's a very nice metaphor for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Some scientists also believe that astrophysicists, I guess, that life actually arrived from space. That it arrived on Earth from other. But then, of course, begs the question: so how did it arise on those other planets?
That's true.
In the first place. So
that's true.
So the question doesn't disappear.
Yeah. And she regards life as a materialization of consciousness. That's how she described it.
That's interesting. That's like the idealism philosophy orientation, where consciousness is primary, and consciousness is what creates matter. So matter is secondary. Matter comes from consciousness, which ties in very nicely with what you just said there.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. Now, I wanted to ask all know about humans and how come we are on Earth, so to speak, because and what she described was truly where you separate yourself into two parts, where you say, on the one hand, we came from elsewhere in the universe, and at the same time, we are made of the earth, and we are of the earth. We are children of the earth, and so that, and it said that we attracted each other. We attracted the humans living elsewhere that were attracted to the earth. And I said, why? Why? What was the agenda? And it explained the agenda, or she explained the agenda in a very strange way. She said, we both were seeking new things, and we wanted to combine freedom and intimacy. And now those are very sort of emotional issues to determine why we come to a planet. But
it sounds almost like a partnership between the planet and humanity.
yes, yes, and that was something that she basically said. She said, "I, the Earth, have nurtured and protected you as my children, but now I wish to speak to you as to a partner."
Yeah.
So that sort of changed the whole level of conversation, so to speak. And I mean, we often think, and we, of course, I was thinking just today, I was thinking, yes, we have been the Earth's children. We've been given everything we need to live and survive and so on. And now that we're grown up, we should maybe slowly start taking care of the Earth. So it's like turning it back to that we're not just children being fed, we're also supposed to be caretakers of the Earth.
Yeah, I think you said this very beautifully in the book, as far as I remember. Almost what you're saying now, but not exactly. Also, in the sense of being aware, or being aware that we are part of Gaia, and the Gaia is a living entity. That was something that was self-evident to human beings thousands of years ago, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And that was, in a way, as you describe it, kind of a childhood stage. We were in a childhood state then, because for children, those kinds of things are self-evident. They're obvious. They don't think about it. It's like everything is alive, and you can. Most of us can remember that from very early childhood, that world feels very much alive. And then came the kind of the teenage period,
Mm-hmm.
the
rebellion,
the rebellious period, when we kind of don't want to be a part of that anymore, and we don't recognize the Earth as our parent. It's just a dead matter, and we can do whatever we want. We can extract minerals and do stuff and done. And now, perhaps, if we are entering a new era, then you might say that we are becoming adults then, and that we are, as you say, ready to enter an epoch, an era where we truly have a partnership with the Earth, and understand that we are two aspects of the same thing.
And she mentioned that sometimes people say, well, humans are like fleas on the Earth. All she has to do is shake a bit and get rid of us, so to speak. She's saying, no, that's not the case. It's much more that we humans are riders, like riders on a horse. And the horse is trying to tell the rider that he's riding on a living being with whom he can communicate. And but the problem is you don't think I'm alive. So you don't even treat me the way you would treat a horse.
Yeah, and I think it's a good analogy, because some riders are very good at understanding that they are on a living being, and they ride. I mean, their horses are helping them, are riding much better with them, of course, and others are just seeing them as some kind of vehicle. There's a spiritual guide called Matthias de Stefano. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No.
As a young Argentinian man who has remembered several previous or parallel lives, but we don't have to go into that. But he has said that, as far as he has, the information has come to him, that humans are the neurons of Gaia. Gaia's neurons, which is, I mean, sounds pretty good actually.
Yeah.
And neurons could go haywire, I guess, and become sick and all that. But still, neurons pretty important part of the body of the planet. Would you agree on that?
I would agree, because I mean we are the most thinking part, so to speak, classically thinking. Although I think that every animal thinks in a much deeper way than we do. So connected with everything. We're sort of synapsizing. We're thinking for ourselves. But yes, I think we are neurons. We are maybe other things too, but that is definitely now. Neurons are ruining the planet. So we have to figure out a better way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we are doing that to our bodies as well when we overthink, yes. When we put too much, importance to the brain, the function of the brain. Yes. We think that the body is a vehicle, is only material, and we only need pills to get healthy and things like that. It's the same thing, but then we're doing it on a global level as well. Yeah. So it's like as above, so below kind of thing.
Exactly. And processed food we also put in there.
Yeah, in Earth and in ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
In a way.
What surprised me through all this stuff that I got was that I was not asked, or we were not asked, to change our thoughts or our actions. And instead, she's saying, I ask you to enter a living relationship with me, and the rest will follow. So that was her main focus, that we connect with her from within and open up. And she became really poetic when she was describing the partnership, the intimate partnership that is actually the way humans and the earth are intended. And they say you cannot love or even fall in love by virtue of your will, but slowly, gently, and steadily you can open your fist that encloses your heart. And then she says, to use an image that is yours, when waking up in the morning, looking into that and gazing into each other's eyes, something happens within you. An opening is created, a flow is allowed, and all is good. That is how close I am to you. So she's talking about a love relationship. This is something that, for example, the philosopher Charles Eisenstein also mentioned, that the real relationship between humans and earth is as lovers, basically. And,
beautiful.
And so does she say, yeah. And then she also says she wants to be seen by us, and that she hasn't seen herself from the outside, the whole earth, so to speak. We see her on a very localized level, but not from outside. Until then, of course, the astronauts started seeing her from outside. And she's saying that that we have an agreement, humanity and the earth, and that about this, and that the space age is part of the fulfillment of that agreement, to make it possible for her to see herself, to see her own beauty, and she needs people to be able to do that. And she says she hasn't seen herself from outside, and that's one of the reasons she attracted us. So now she wants to see her beauty. Okay. Normally, we don't see beauty as all that important. We see it as nice, but not all that important. And according to her, beauty means, the definition that I got was, it means mirroring the inside to the outside. And the more perfectly you do that, all of nature does that. Humans do not. We hide and whatever, but this is beauty. And she says that we humans often fight against our own beauty and against being in the service of beauty.
We think it's vain to focus on beauty or something.
No. I think it is. I think beauty is.
I mean, humans tend to think that it's vain, but it's
yes, they do. Yes, they do. Exactly. Whereas she says that beauty is an incredibly strong force, and it can harness all other forces to serve her, so to speak. but that we often fight against our own beauty due to shame for what we have done. And she quotes our Christian mythology and saying that it begins with the shame of gaining knowledge and enjoying sexuality. And so from then on, she goes very far, and she says that the things that we have done and that we are ashamed of ultimately all have to do with our shame of sexuality. And she said, right from the beginning, I would like to clarify that I, the earth, am a sexual being. All my rocks and landscapes and everything and rivers are sexual beings. And that every time that you humans are sexually aroused, I, the earth, come up and contribute, let's say, half of that energy myself. And you will notice this when you make love out in space, because unless you actually attract me back there, otherwise you will feel that it's a whole different experience. Now, I haven't been able to test that yet.
But I love that.
Yeah.
Love making and the sexuality metaphor there, or
yeah,
it's not even a metaphor. It's actual, I guess.
Yeah. And she says that as long as you condemn the energies and the act by which you have taken physical form, your connection to the timeless and formless dimension of yourself will be distorted. I mean, that's pretty clear. If we come here through means that we are ashamed of and that we condemn, then we won't remember what was before, so to speak. We regard that as this big trauma, so to speak, through which we all came about through the sex of our parents. And this nobody really wants to know this or see this or whatever. It's regarded as such a private thing that one doesn't admit to it, really. And
maybe it's a little bit better now than it used to be.
Maybe, but fundamentalism is still with us.
Yeah, it is.
So, and maybe growing also, who knows? Well, she speaks of many other things. She speaks of the weather as a swirling of her emotions. She speaks of the sun and her lovemaking with the sun, and that we are living right in the middle of the process of the sun making love to the earth, and vice versa. And once we really understand this, then we will realize that we are truly living in the Garden of Eden. We're back there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Until we got ashamed of our own life force, so to speak.
You mentioned in the book Terence McKenna, philosopher and psychedelics pioneer, you might say, at least in the Western world. What about the possibility of connecting with Gaia by way of psychedelics? I know that some people say that they commune with the active plants themselves when they take ayahuasca, for instance. Would that be one avenue?
I think so. I mean, I tried ayahuasca once, but they were just starting, so I didn't get enough, and nothing happened. so I never really tried it.
Too bad.
But yes, too bad, and I expect to do so at some point. But I've also read that from McKenna, who really sees that as the king's road to connect with the earth, for example. And yes, I mean, so many of the indigenous people use plant medicine to connect with everything from the ancestors to the land, to earth, to spiritual beings. So definitely. Although I did not everything I wrote here and experienced was without using any drugs. I always have to say that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question before we go on to the more concrete results of your your communication here is how the Earth itself how she was born herself. I mean, has Gaia, has Earth told you about her own birth or where she came from the beginning?
No, and I never thought of asking either, but it's a good question. all the indigenous people have their stories about this beginning of the earth or of the universe.
I know.
Same thing goes for the tradition that I was in, the Deer tribe, as they call it.
Yeah.
And there is a creation story.
Everything begins at some point.
Yeah.
Within this linear time thing. But that was also something that you mentioned in the book, that the Earth told you that when we fully understand that we are part of Gaia and we are two aspects of the same living thing, then we will also change our view on linear time, and we will have a different perception of time, and we will understand our own history much better. How does that work?
Okay, those were two different things. The one about time, yes, she says, or told me, that time is not what we think it is. It basically said, so what is time? Time is an event, and that different events from different times, so to speak, or different events can interact with each other. And she's also saying that communication through time is also possible. I mean, communicating with the future is no problem. I just have to write a letter to someone and I'm communicating with that person in the future. But the other way around, for that person to communicate back to me now, is supposedly possible, not according to physics yet, but according to the Earth, definitely. I actually ran a little experiment with that.
Okay.
I don't know if we have the time to get into that, but
briefly.
I was out on the land where I used to have a dictaphone and ask questions and speak my answers that I got from the Earth. And I used to type them up the next morning. And I was out there, and then when she was talking about the possibility of communicating through time, I thought, hey, I could run an experiment here. I could talk to myself tomorrow and ask myself in the future, when I'm typing this up, to send something back to me now. And so I said, okay, Sten, tomorrow when you're typing this up, put the dictaphone aside. Send me something that you've experienced between now that I'm speaking this and when you're typing it up. That's all I said.
Yeah.
And then I continued to ask my questions. Well, the next morning I had to go into town, so I didn't type anything up. It took me a week before I was back out there. And that morning I was sitting on my porch. I was having a cup of coffee and my first cigarette. I used to smoke back then. Don't anymore. And then as I was doing that, I thought, well, why can't I just connect with the Earth here instead of going outside in nature and do it? So I tried to, and the connection happened. And what I heard was, I, the Earth, really want to thank you for writing this book. It's very, very valuable to me. I was a bit taken aback, and I thought, okay, that's fine. You're welcome. And then I went inside and I started typing it up, and I came to this place and I put my thing aside and I sent the message, the Earth is very thankful for what I've experienced, that she told me that she's very thankful. That's what I sent to myself in the past.
Uh-huh.
And then I kept on typing. And then suddenly it said, by the way, I'm very thankful that you're writing this book, period. And I had no idea that I had written that.
No.
And of course, I had no idea what was going to happen. So that was my own little small experiment to see if I could communicate with the past. With the past.
Yeah.
A bit complicated, the whole
bit
story.
Complicated, but apparently it works. And then the other question was, which I thought was connected, but wasn't really connected perhaps, is that we were going to understand much more about our history, our own history.
Yes. And that's where something very unexpected, even for me, happened. Because it said that she would like us, meaning either me or humanity or whoever, to create or build a device with which the Earth can speak to us in our language.
Mm.
And I said, sure, but how? and said the principle is that I, the Earth, have, of course, an electric field. You just put two things in the Earth, and there's an electricity between them, or a charge. I can overlay locally the signals, so to speak, the electrical field that is there all the time. I can overlay that with something that you can decipher as a message.
Mm.
So basically, using what's there as a carrier wave, and then it can add things, so to speak. And we would start out by using the Morse code or something like that. Basically, the basic principle was putting two copper rods in the earth, 5 meters apart, and measure what's there and amplifying it and reading the message that's there. It said in the beginning we'd just be trying to get words. Later on, we can have more sophisticated systems whereby I can send you images, even videos, and I would like to show you what the true history of Earth has been like, what has actually happened on Earth, because you're not aware. Many of the things that have happened on Earth, you're not aware. You're not aware of your own history either.
Oh.
So,
have you been able to build this device yet?
Well, I gave it a try when I was back in Arizona, and I don't know enough about electronics to do it on my own, but I found a guy who helped me. He was a bit crazy too, and I got to the point where I got signals, but and that sounded like Morse code. Dee 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 dee. But the problem was there was no delineation between the letters and between the words. It has to have, if you say Sten, you say did 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 and make a break, and then a T, which is da, did, da, did, and so on.
So it's just one continuous row of
yes, except for once when I knew that my own openness was important for the reception. And at one point I had the feeling of really being connected with the Earth. And that's when I got the only anecdotal positive thing. I got di-di-di-da, which to me was like, victory. Okay, great.
Beethoven.
Yeah, Beethoven. And di-di-di-da is V for victory also.
Oh, yeah.
Morse code.
Yeah, that's cool. Because it would be really helpful to know exactly what has transpired on Earth, to know what our history has actually been like.
And I realized, I put that project I put on ice or on the back burner back then.
Yeah.
But now
we'll get back to the other project, the other hands-on thing.
Yes,
I want to talk more about that. But I have another question before that, namely that you say also in the book that we need, and we've touched on humanity's proneness to be bad to the Earth and not really listening to her and utilizing her in a cruel way and all that. And you said that we need to come down from our pedestal of thinking that we are the highest intelligence on Earth. And I agree that many people think that, and science has perhaps thought that from the time that we entered this teenage era. But perhaps you don't agree on what I'm going to say now. But in my view, Western intellectual culture, particularly the intellectual culture, is fundamentally very pessimistic. And humans are often described as some kind of, vermin on the planet, on the face of the planet. So that is actually something that a story that is told to a large extent in schools and in academia and everywhere. And in my opinion, the narrative in the environmental movement, for instance, is often paradoxically revealing some kind of a disrespect for Gaia, because every adverse event is attributed to humans, and poor Earth, poor Gaia, is framed as not being able to do anything about them by herself at all, as if there's no planetary resilience at all. Not so few environmentalists actually hate humanity. But if you hate humanity, can you then love Earth? I don't know if you catch my drift here, but what are your thoughts on my view on this?
Well, if we hate humanity, it is like a part of the earth hating itself, because we are the earth. And I agree. I mean, this is part of the whole we are ashamed thing. We are ashamed from where we come from, and so on. And so, and of course, we just look around and we see all the destruction that we are continuing to do. We haven't even reached peak CO2 yet. We're still moving ahead there. And so I can understand where it comes from just by seeing what the earth is doing. But that's no attitude to take when you are trying to do something better. Then you have to bet on the good aspects of humans, and that they are stronger, and that you can come through these times. Because let's say the people who discovered oil, they had no idea what they were doing to the earth or what would happen there. So you cannot just give blame to just all the people who have been toiling and working and doing stuff. Most of them also simply because they needed to have a living, to make a living. And so I have no time for negative aspects of either of human. I mean, there are plenty of negative aspects. I mean, all the wars and everything. There's plenty of it. But as somebody who wants to change something or have an impact, or there you have to bet on the positive aspects of both humanity and the earth.
Yeah.
Now it could be just as easy to say, as some people are afraid of the earth being conscious, because they say she's going to hate us, she's going to kill us all. It's like they are afraid of artificial intelligence, and they say it's going to kill us all because we program her that way. Ultimately.
So ultimately, we are afraid of ourselves, really.
Yes, exactly. And if we compare now Earth intelligence with artificial intelligence is a very small part of Earth intelligence. And I think we'll realize that once we have this device. And back to the device, I realize that I'm not going to be taken seriously unless I have a somewhat functioning thing in this direction, or that's one of my goals, and I think it should be one of our goals if we believe that the earth is able to communicate with us. And so I've now found a guy who lives here just over the border in Switzerland that I'm working with to develop such a device. He's the head of the Parapsychology Association of Switzerland, and he's a great electronics expert. And so we are developing questions to ask the earth about how it should be built, because this is not easy to get technical instructions from the earth of that kind. But
have you asked her about her resilience? I mean, speaking of how the environmentalists
look at this. I'm very well aware. I mean, the Gaia theory speaks hardly of anything else than about her resilience. How the Earth itself has seen to it, or life also, that the combination of gases in the atmosphere and salt levels in the ocean and many other things. It is a self-regulating system, very, very resilient. And you notice this, of course, as soon as you stop poisoning something, it grows back incredibly fast. I mean, it heals itself 10 times faster than humans do, or 100 times. So I'm very... we haven't been able to do anything to make her less resilient.
Well, that's hopeful. That's very positive. Hopeful, Good to hear.
Yeah. A final thing about what the earth told me: what would change if we had this intimate connection with the earth? And to quote the earth, she was saying that the possibilities that open up for you through our cooperation are practically limitless. If we were in an intimate conscious connection with each other, entirely different methods of housing, energy production, transportation, water supply, food production, and disease prevention would become available to you. Your love relationships would change, as would your connections to animals. I'm so much a part of the reality that surrounds you that a shift in how you see me can be like falling in love, head over heels, with everything in your surroundings. Through cooperation between humans and me, the Earth will leave no area untouched.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the when I read that, then I think, well, high time I do something, because if this is true, then I'm on to something so incredibly big that I can't just say, no, it's not my table or something. And the final request from the Earth was for people to go out in nature and communicate and talk in any way they want to with the Earth. And my suggestion is that you give it the benefit of the doubt, so that you initiate it. You go out there, maybe sit by a tree or walk or something, and start speaking out loud to the Earth. Keep on talking, see what, if anything, comes back. Yeah. And do this as often as you want to. Yeah. So that's sort of the final request. And the final words were, this could be the beginning of a wonderful friendship.
Like Hollywood, like a Hollywood line.
Yeah, a Hollywood line. Casablanca all over again.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about these living globes that you also are want to produce now, because you mentioned the overview effect that astronauts get when they get out there in space and see Earth in all her beauty. So yes, tell us more. What's the project about, and what do you hope this will achieve?
The project is about, or maybe if I start a bit with the history of it, in 1998, Vice President Al Gore had a dream. He dreamt about a satellite that was placed between the Earth and the Sun in such a way that it could be stable there and look back at the Earth and take pictures of the Earth live as she looks right now. He sent those images, were put on the internet so that anybody could log on and see the Earth right now, the sunlit part of the Earth. Now, I did not know this when a few years later, in 2001, I think it was, I took part in what they call well, it was a ceremony, and like a Swedish sauna or something. Anyway, I lay down on the Earth as I had been told and connected with the Earth in order to stabilize myself. And when I did that, I realized, hey, I could speak to the Earth now again. It's been 5 years since I had this connection, but maybe now that I'm lying on the Earth. And so I said, hey, are you there? And do you have anything to tell me? And I got the answer, yes, write a letter to Al Gore. Okay, but what about? No answer. Okay, so I took that and I said, sure, I can write him a letter, but let's see what. What about? And so a week later, I realized, I remembered having read an article 3 months earlier about Al Gore having a dream, seeing the satellite and so on. So that's what I wrote to him about, but I had to invent something. So I said, my suggestion would be that something like that, these images, they should be created so as to benefit the organizations that are working for the preservation or care of the Earth. I got an answer 3 weeks later, giving me the name and telephone number of the person at NASA who was the head of the project. And they said, yes, we already have satellites there looking at the sun, but we could put another one there looking at the Earth. And they actually built that thing for millions of dollars. But then the Republicans didn't want it to be, or Congress didn't want it to be funded. So the thing was put into storage. And it was kept in storage for ages. At this time, I thought, am I just on a wild goose chase here? I was asked to connect with Al Gore. now what do I do? So I thought maybe one could do this project as a privately funded project. So I went to a space services company in Houston, Texas, that builds satellites and operates them. And I talked to the CEO there, and he said, "Sure, we can do that. It'll cost you $85 million. It costs $10 million to operate it, $10 million." But he told me a more interesting thing. He said, on the other side, there is another point where you can also put a satellite that looks back at the Earth and sees the dark side or the night lights of the Earth. And that's when I had my own epiphany. I thought, well, take those two and let them project them onto a globe. That's how the idea came about. Now, at the time, both the satellites and then globes, there were globes, but they cost like between $25,000 and $250,000 each, and they were large and nothing small. So I put the whole project on ice, and it wasn't until 2021 that I restarted it. Again, I had a connection with the Earth who said, now is the time for that project of yours about the globe. And it'll happen with ease. Oh. Well, it hasn't. I don't know if it's been happening with ease, but some very strange things have happened. I mean, I'm now working together with somebody who has a company that builds globes, and he's saying he can basically do the whole project. We'd be developing them out of so-called micro LEDs, small, the same material that we have in our computer screens, but as round. So one can imagine that it's like a round television onto which images of the Earth as she looks right now are projected.
Yeah.
And one doesn't have to send up new satellites. One can use existing satellites and put them together. So all of that came down in terms of pricing. And if we make these other ones, it will be possible to have affordable globes if we make the micro LED globe. And that's what I'm working on now, or together with some other people.
So if these are spread around the world, what do you think they will achieve in the hearts and minds of people?
Well, I think it depends a lot on how they are introduced, because there is a lot of experience about how people react to these larger globes and so on. So the idea is to recreate the overview effect here on Earth for as many people as possible, because we can't send them up to the moon to look back at the Earth. Too expensive, among other things. And so, I mean, first
it will become some kind of an overview effect if you have one of those in your room, and
I think so, because you'd
changes
be living
in real
with
time.
It. You'd be living with it, and you'd be seeing, oh, now the sun is going up over Hawaii, and here comes another hurricane, and the sun is going down here, as I can see if I'm looking out. And you can add apps to it, many different kinds, so you can speed up the cloud formation. So you realize that weather is not something local. It's not just a low pressure system coming in from the west. It's connected to wherever it goes after that, and it comes from the Gulf of Mexico. You see that it is the Earth breathing, so to speak.
Yes.
And the same thing with the ocean currents. They also, and especially now, if the Gulf Stream doesn't want to play ball anymore, that's going to be tough.
It's very, very complex and complicated. And I'm kind of interested in the climate issue, so I've written a lot about that, and it's very, very complex. And that's unfortunately, people don't understand that. They think that we can just turn a knob and then problem solved. Right. It's not that simple.
Right.
And the Earth is doing a lot of this herself, but I mean, we are adding to it, of course.
Yeah, but she does say that the stuff that people are doing now with geoengineering.
Yeah.
She is definitely against that, because she describes it as if you're driving a locomotive and it's not running well, and you take a wrench and you throw it into the engine. That's about what you're doing when you're trying to to get things mixed up there with the Earth.
Yeah.
And
Screw
I
up the
agree.
system. Mm.
You don't know what will happen if you start reflecting sunlight back out.
No. It's probably a very bad idea. I tend to agree there. Yeah. So, but these, I mean, these globes, they sound really cool. I definitely want one if it's not too expensive. So, how can people find them, and how can people find the other wonderful work that you're doing? Where to order these globes?
Yeah. Although I have been working on this project for over 20 years now, it is still in its baby shoes. And what we have done, we've created a nonprofit in the United States, a so-called 501c3, tax deductible thing, which is called Living Globe Society. And that's a nonprofit. So under that nonprofit, we're planning to do the whole project. But so we are now trying to raise funding for it, because just developing these things is going to cost quite a bit. There is a livingglobes.org is a website for what we're doing. But
you can't really order one already.
You cannot order one right now. You can order you can now order one, but it doesn't have really live images.
So it's work in progress.
Yeah.
But there is a website, livingglobes.org, and you mentioned also the book that is coming up called Magic and Mystery in Everyday Life.
Yeah.
Do you have a website where people can find all of these things that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, stenlinnander.com.
Stenlinnander.com.
There I have that, which includes, let's say, this book and the second one also, and how to order it. I have not included the part about the my last book, the Magic and Mystery book, because it's not finished yet. But it should be that should just be a question of a few weeks now.
Yeah, wonderful.
I hope.
Sten Linnander, thank you so much for joining this show, and it's been a joy talking to you today. And good luck now with your wonderful advocacy for the planet that we all live on.
Well, thank you, Anders, and it's been my whole pleasure. This is the first time that I've presented all of this stuff in English. You are the beginning of my coming out.
Something big.
Something big, yeah.
Maybe the first podcast of many to come.
So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
You do great other things too that I've been watching. So that's fine. Thank you for all your dedication.
Thank you, sir. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that like button and share the video with your friends. Please support the channel if you can. I appreciate all the support. You can become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or you can make a one-off donation via PayPal if you wish. All the links are in the description box below. Thank you.